Testing 1, 2. It is now 12 o'clock noon, and today is Monday. I'm glad that you've joined us. I hope that you are able to pick me up on Facebook. I'm not able to pick it up myself, but today we're doing a very, very important series throughout the week. Last night, I was watching a show on BET, or one of the BET affiliates, and it was called Unsung, SUNG. And the show focused on Tammy Terrell. Some of you may remember Tammy Terrell from the 60s and the 70s. Singing with Marvin Gaye. And the show actually touched the heartstring because it actually centered around not so much of her singing career as it did looking at her life. Uh, People loved her singing Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, songs like that. But behind the scenes, there was a sad, dark history of domestic violence. The allegations stemmed from even James Brown beating her to David Ruffin beating her. Uh, so all of that contributed to my lesson series for this week as we look at this topic of domestic violence. And I just hope, trust, and pray that as you study with me this week, I hope that you're able to understand why this lesson series on domestic violence is so important. On each of the slides, or most of the slides that I will present today, there is an 800 number. That 1-800-799-7233 number is for a direct inroad into a domestic violence hotline in case you or anyone you know might be victims of domestic violence. So for today's lesson, let's talk about the broadness of domestic violence. Some of the aspects of the domestic abuse includes the dynamics of it, the abuser's motivations. What drives a person to want to harm another person? What excuses are there for domestic violence? The irony is, excuses come from the person who is the victim of domestic violence, as well as the person who is actually doing the domestic violence, and sometimes from those surrounding individuals. We call them enablers of domestic violence. Uh, we're also going to talk about what the research shows about the gender of abusers and the persistently criminal background or ideology of abusers. Uh, we're going to talk about how responsive violence and situational couple violence differ from abuse. We're also going to talk about the interaction of gender and domestic abuse. And we will talk about the implications for intervention, both by the criminal justice system as well as by others. So, throughout this week, we're going to take a critical look at this topic of domestic violence. And as I said earlier, one of the driving components that have caused me to take a look at this was watching a show last night on a BET affiliate called Unsung. And just watching this young lady, Tammy Terrell, by the time she's 24 years old, she's dead. Uh, the cause of death was brain tumors, but we can't overlook the beatings she took. The beatings by James Brown, as it was alleged. It was alleged that she was hit in the head with a motorcycle helmet by David Ruffin. Uh, and although the neurologists were saying, well, she already had headaches and she already probably had the brain tumor. So we can't do a direct correlation between the domestic abuse and the brain tumors. But what they can't rule out is, did it contribute in some way to her early demise? As I said also at the onset, on the majority of the slides that I will present today, that number that you see, the 800 number, 800 799 7233, the acronyms that people can remember are SAFE, 800 799 SAFE. But if you or someone you know are in an abusive relationship, that is the number to call. And you can always call 911. The phrase domestic violence actually has multiple meanings. Uh, in research and in popular writings, it is often used to refer not just to domestic abuse, but also to fights, uh, self defense, patterns of violence between intimate partners. As I was watching the show last night, one of the things that kind of saddened me when one of the individuals was talking about the allegation of abuse against David Ruffin is that, uh, well, he didn't beat her with his fist, and yet they said, but he hit her with a motorcycle helmet. I mean, how can you quantify? Uh, he didn't hit her with his fist and he didn't knock her down uh, and shove her, but he knocked the living daylights out of her with a motorcycle helmet. So people were trying to differentiate between, well, it was just a fight. Uh, no, it was domestic violence. It was abuse, is what it was. So we must learn in church circles, in every community, to call domestic violence what it is, domestic violence, and not try to sugarcoat it or try to cover it up or explain it away. Abusers and the victims uh, kind of are in a controlled situations, and it's coercive. Typically, the abuser is someone who engages in a pattern of coercive control, not simply someone who physically assaults a partner. Tomorrow, I will show you the domestic violence wheel. And at the center of that wheel is power and control. What individuals typically are about when they are abusers is control. Uh, and they sometimes are more open with how they attempt to control. And sometimes it's more subtle or passive, but nonetheless, it is still an attempt to undermine and to control, whether it's physically, psychologically, financially, sexually. The driver behind abuse is control. Now, a victim is someone who is the target of the individual abuser's attempt to control. Every abuser is like a predator seeking someone to devour. If they don't have someone to devour, to control, then they can't abuse. So at the foundation of the mentality of an abuser is always, I've got to control someone, and whatever means are necessary to master that control over the individual, they're willing to do it. So the victim is someone who is the target of domestic abuse, not simply the recipient of response or situational violence. In other words, it's never an accident. People, let's say if you were looking at a lion, or if you were looking at a predator reptile, if you're watching TV, or if you're in the wild on a safari and you see that reptile in the water, or you see that lion jump and grab a victim, whether it's a rabbit, whether it's a smaller animal, or whether it's a huge reptile and it grabs a smaller fish or whatever it is, do you think for a minute that's the first time they've ever done that? The answer is a resounding no. It's the first one you observed, and we're inundated by, wow, look at how vicious that was, and look at how quick that was. And the victim never saw them sneaking up, but we're standing back watching it, and we can see, you need to run, you need to move, something is coming at you. Well, that's kind of the abuser. And the victim sometimes does not see what we see. And the abuser loves it that way, because if the victim was alert, and if the victim did not want to fall prey to the abuser, if they saw it and they recognized it, they would flee. Well, guess what the abuser would do? They'd find somebody else, or they would keep looking for that individual. So the victim is someone who is the target of domestic abuse, not just simply the recipient. They are targeted. And we'll talk about that more throughout the week. Let's do this final slide for today. Just looking at some of the statistics about domestic abuse. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States alone. Now, during 1 year, this equates to more than 10,000 or 10 million, women and men. 10 million. 1 in 4 women And 1 in 9 men experience severe, let me emphasize, severe intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking with impacts such as injury, fearfulness, PTSD, use of victim services, contraction of sexually transmitted diseases. You can go on and on. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. This includes a range of behaviors such as slapping, shoving, pushing, and in some cases, it might not be considered domestic violence because people say, oh, that's just how we communicate. Uh, 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have been injured by intimate partners. 1 in 10 women have been raped by an intimate partner. And data is unable on male victims because if a male is raped by an intimate partner, women and in homosexual relationships, typically they don't report it because of the shame. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence, beatings, burning, strangling by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 18 men have been stalked by an intimate partner during their lifetime to the point in which they felt very fearful or believed that they or someone close to them would be harmed or killed. On a typical day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to that domestic violence hotline nationwide. Can you imagine that? On a typical day, more than 20,000 phone calls are made to that 1-800-SAFE number. The presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increased the risk of homicides by 500%. Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crimes. 19% of domestic violence involves some type of weapon. Domestic victimization is correlated with a higher rate of depression and suicidal behavior. The suicidal behavior drives, I feel I can't get away from this. There is no escape. Where do I go? Who will believe me? So what the person does is decide to check out. Only 34% of people who are injured by intimate partners receive medical care for their injuries. Here's why. In most hospitals, if people go in for medical care, the hospitals will contact the police or social services, and they will report that these injuries, these wounds that we're treating, appears to be the indicators that the person in front of us is a recipient of some type of abuse. We don't know what, but we think this is something that you need to check out. And the person who has received the abuse, they say that they make up their mind, well, I just, I'll patch myself up, or I'll put on sunglasses, or I'll cover with makeup, or I'll wear long sleeve clothing, or I'll just stay in, or I will avoid social settings until the bruises heal. But I will not seek out medical attention. Now, you've got to ask yourself, why? Many times it's out of fear. Many times it's out of shame. Well, now you back up and say, fear of what? Fear of the person who abused them. when I was watching Unsung last night, Tammy Terrell, after the purported beating by James Brown, she was out on the road with him. And she called her mother back in Philadelphia. And her mother came and got her and took her home. And she decided, I'm done with this type life. And she was going to go to medical school and become a doctor. But the draw of that lifestyle, according to the show, pulled her back into the singing business. And when she went back into that same world that she had come out of, that's when she met David Ruffin. And she was back in the same type abusive scenario all over again. There are predators out there who are looking for individuals who they think are docile, quiet spirits, humble, fun-loving people. But the predators are seeing those individuals as opportunities to overpower and to control. I want to encourage you to continue with me throughout this week, because one of the things that is not talked about much when we're in solitary confinement, especially during this season of COVID-19, is how much domestic violence has escalated. In close confinements, people can't get away, they can't go places, they can't stay in the work environment, extended hours, they can't go out and hang out with their friends or in the park. So now they're forced into those confinements, many times with the abuser. But stay with me the entirety of this week. And it is my prayer that we can talk about this matter in such a way that we may be able to help other people. I'm going to stop, and if you have any questions or comments, we will entertain those for a few seconds. Okay, if not, let's pray together, and I'll see you back in class again tomorrow. Father, you have granted us space to love you, to be loved by you, to be valued by you. And as we approach this topic of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, abuse, control of others, I pray that we will study this topic in a way that reinvigorates our zeal to help others become liberated from the pain, the suffering, the humiliation that abusers put their victims through. I pray, Father, that you will protect those who are in abusive situations. And I pray also that you will grant them the proper amount of courage to seek you and to seek the help they need by calling the various helplines and even reaching out to 911 or family members to escape becoming the victim of those who seek to control. Bless us, Father, as we encourage, as we attempt to just be a safety net for those who are hurting. Through Jesus, I pray. Amen. Okay. Thank you for being in class today. And I look forward to seeing everyone back again tomorrow. God bless you, and please remain safe.
I have a question before we go. For some
Okay.
reason, PG Churches is me, Pam. For some reason, I've lost access to the camera. Does anybody know how I can get that back? What I need to do?
Uh, is your camera on?
Well, see, I don't even know where to look, Brother McClure.
Okay. If you
It,
look down at the bottom,
uh-huh.
do you see a little emblem that looks like a microphone?
Yes.
Next to that microphone, do you see a little thing that looks like a camera video?
Uh-huh. It says start video. And each time that I click on that,
Okay.
telling me that Zoom is unable to detect a camera. And I don't know
Okay.
what happened because I used to be able to,
Okay. Beside that, where you clicked,
uh-huh.
there should be a little arrow pointing up right beside that video.
Okay, no, I have it beside the mute, but not beside the video.
There's no type arrow or a little rectangle or anything.
No.
So what happens when you click on the video box?
Let me see, microphone, speaker. Okay, if I click on start video, it just tells me that it's unable to detect the camera.
Okay, and right by that little box that you click, there is no like little bullets or like an upside down rectangle or anything beside it.
No, I even clicked on something that looks like 3 dots and it says more, and all that says is participants invite, chat, and record on this computer. But I
Oh,
used to have the camera. I don't know what happened.
huh.
Pam, have you gotten an upgrade to your computer any recently?
Only to my QuickBooks, but this was happening even before I upgraded to a different version of QuickBooks.
Okay.
It might have to do with her settings.
Yeah.
She
Yeah,
might have
that's
to go
what
into the setting in the control panel. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be something simple like
Mhm.
just on the right by the camera, you could just tell it that you're using the computer camera instead of an external. Like
Okay,
I'm using a Microsoft camera, and
okay,
every now and then I just have to click and just let it know which camera I'm using. But like you said, it's probably in the settings.
okay, all right. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, have a
Okay.
good
Hello,
day,
everybody.
everybody.
Hello, Dr. McLeod.
Bye.
Hello, sister.
Bye.
How are you?
Bye.
Doing
Good.
great.
Doing good, Brother
Good.
Stewart.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. I look
Bye,
forward
Brother
to the
My love to
snowstorm.
your family.
Everybody's good.
Oh,
How's
well.
your family?
Great, great, great. So far.
All
Okay.
right.